In the 1920s, a new music swept across the South. It came from the hills and the farms and the Mid-South cities, from small towns like Bowling Green, Kentucky, and from big towns like Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville, the Athens of the South. Here began the Grand Ole Opry. Radio shows like the Opry, the National Barn Band, and Renfro Valley relayed hillbilly music from the South to the nation. But it was the recording companies and the small radio stations who first discovered the hillbilly musician and provided support for his music.
Students are always referring to my folk song course as Hillbilly 101 or something like that, and this really drives me crazy because they hear the nasal quality of mountain singing and they sense the rural atmosphere in mountain singing and they equate that with hillbilly. And actually mountain singing and hillbilly singing are two different things, though they are interrelated and have interchanged material right along. Mountain music, of course, is the music that was brought over by the British folk and was left in the Appalachians or in the Ozarks as the migrations went west. But hillbilly music is a style that grew up in the 20s and the 30s in the recording industry and on the radio. Actually, hillbilly music began about 1923 when a fellow named Ralph Peer of OK Records was recording Negro singers down in Atlanta, Georgia. And he was talked into recording Fiddling John Carson, who worked for station WSB at the time. And he thought the record he made of Carson was about the worst record that he ever heard. But the thing sold fairly well, and pretty soon other records were made, and pretty soon the whole hillbilly industry mushroomed. But I don't really know why I'm telling you all this, because the man who really knows the hillbilly industry backward and forward, and who's the great authority on it, is D.K. Wilgus, who in the summer of 1962 was at Western Kentucky State College. Wilgus now teaches at UCLA. And anyone who wants to know anything about hillbilly music goes and sees D.K. So I think that's what we better do right now before I get in too deep.
Hillbilly music is a derisive term, but like many such terms, it has an in-group usage which is completely accepted. It seems to have been Southern white folk musicians who called themselves hillbillies and gave the name to their music. So we might as well accept it. There were hillbillies, backcountry whites, before there was hillbilly music. And there was hillbilly music before there was any modern commercial outlet. Hillbilly music is a hybrid music. But all folk music has been a hybrid in Western Europe for at least the last 2,000 years. Hillbilly music is that performed by Southern white folk performers influenced by Negro music, city music, industrialization, and commercialization. Commercial hillbilly music began in a small way in towns like this, Morgantown, Kentucky, where the folk musicians brought their instruments to town to play in the courthouse square on Saturday.
I'm as free as my age is
The idea that folk music is solely the possession of and product of domestic tradition, the spinners and knitters in the sun, is essentially a romantic concept and an outmoded concept. Folk cultures produce professional tale tellers and professional musicians. They exist in many parts of the world today. And minstrels of a sort had much to do with the development of hillbilly music. Hillbilly music is instrumentally influenced, if not instrumentally dominated. The fiddle and perhaps the dulcimer were about the only instruments available to the white folk musicians in the early 19th century. After the turn of the century, the banjo and the guitar and the mandolin were in the possession of folk musicians in the South and were regularizing the rhythm of folk song, altering its modal and chordal structure, and developing small string bands. The South and even the Southern Appalachians were not totally isolated from developments in American culture. Folk musicians accepted and altered selectively the foreign materials. The outside music affected domestic tradition, but especially what we may call the professional tradition. There were local musicians playing for neighborhood socials, itinerant street minstrels with old and new songs selling broadsides or ballads. There were medicine shows and circuses that used these folk performers, whose music was hillbilly music. These entertainers formed the basis of hillbilly music on radio and phonograph records. One of the earliest of these musicians was and is Clarence Tom Ashley.
To sing a weary song, it takes a weary man to sing a weary song. I'm weary now.
At one memorable recording session in 1927 appeared the Carter family with a hard, tight melodic line, carefully styled harmony, and an infectious guitar style. That session also produced Jimmy Rogers, whose songs were a restyling of Negro blues mixed with minstrel yodeling. Maybelle Carter, with her children, continues to perform today, and old-time outdoor shows are still seen in towns like Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, that's a long story. I started back when I was a kid. I used to play five-string banjo. In fact, I started playing the auto harp before I could remember, to tell you the truth. And then I started playing five-string banjo, and I took up guitar when I was 13 years old. Of course, I married into the Carter family, and we started after I was married, and that's how we got the Carter family name back in 1927. We did mostly radio shows. We had a show in Del Rio, Texas for 2 years, 1938 and 39, and 40 and 41, in the fall of those years. We also did a recording with Jimmy Rogers, and in fact, we did our first recording at the same time Jimmy did his, only we did ours about 2 days before he did his. We recorded on the 2nd day of August, 1927, and Jimmy did his on the 4th of August, 1927. Oh, the first song we ever did was Bury Me Under the Weeping Willow.
But commercial hillbilly has always had a folk base, and new influences continue. Take, for example, the well-known Merle Travis, whose background illustrates, among other things, one level of Negro influence on hillbilly performance. Travis, leading exponent of one of the most complex folk guitar styles in the United States, grew up in the mining country of western Kentucky, where Negroes and whites worked together in the mines and shared some traditions. Travis learned from slightly older white performers, Ike Everly, Kennedy Jones, and particularly Mose Rager. Mose has left his days of all-night picking behind him and is a solid citizen of Drakesboro. Well, Mose, you been doing any much picking lately?
No, I really haven't. I haven't played any it's been years since I really played any music to amount to anything. Been thumping around the house a little every once in a while.
Well, do you think you could play me a little bit of that old Pilgrim song?
It might be a little rusty, but I'll try to thump off a tune.
Well, where'd that old song, that Pilgrim, come from, Mose?
That old song, I Am a Pilgrim, we sang that old song around here years ago. It seemed like to me about 30 years ago. It's just an old Brush Arbor song. Everybody sang it. Merle Travis and my two brothers. We'd all get together out here out the edge of town and just sit out there till about 12 o'clock and sang old hymns. And we'd sing I Am a Pilgrim. So as far as I Am a Pilgrim, it's just an old Brush Arbor song.
Well, now, Mose, where did you learn that thumb picking style you use?
You know, there's a lot of thumb pickers now playing, and that's been going on for years. You know, colored fellers way back yonder played thumb pick, just as far as I can remember. But really, where I got on to it to start with is an old fellow down here, a fellow by the name of Levi Forster, down at DePoy. And DePoy, Kentucky, down here, it ain't too far. And he'd come over and set up till bedtime, you know, and pick for us maybe one night a week. We just enjoy it. And he played that old thumb lick. Of course, he didn't have no thumb pick, but he played the thumb lick. And so I tried to get on the way he played. I thought it was really good, which it was back then.
You didn't have any electric amplifiers in those days?
Oh, no, not those days. Wasn't such a thing as it was just an old plug box, looked like a high volume guitar. The string is about that high off the neck.
Well, I'd like to hear a little bit of how that style sounds on a modern amplified guitar.
Okay, doke. Hold it, Bob.
The true base of hillbilly music continues to be the local musician, the local band, which contributes its best or most appealing performers and songs to the top commercial outlets. I found a singing family of this sort in the little community of Nobob, Kentucky. The Walkers live on a small family farm, but they are also a family band that performs at auctions, picnics, and on small radio stations in the area. Sammy, the father of the clan, is the son of an old-time fiddler and neighborhood entertainer. He grew up in a family band and learned to play the banjo at age 9.
Well, Sammy, I'm still looking for some of those old tunes.
Well, I know a few of them. Learned from my father several years ago.
Well, you ever know how to play that old tune they used to pick around here called Bowling Green?
Yes, I do. I play it on the banjo.
Well, that's fine. Could you have one of the boys bring your banjo out and pick it for me now?
Yes, I'd be glad to. Ronnie, will you bring the banjo out for us?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ronnie.
You're welcome.
That was real fine, Sammy. I like those old-time ones.
I like to play them, too. That's one of the older ones.
Sammy, you taught your wife to play the guitar after you were married, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Well, Bernice, could you sing one of those old songs that you used to sing before then, for maybe part of Hangman?
Yes, I learned Hangman from the older generation when I was a little bitty girl, and I think it's a real old song.
children came along, Sammy had his own family band, playing local engagements and playing with groups like the Carvers, of which Cousin Emmy is nationally known. A lot of the children have moved through the band, married, and moved away, but Nell Walker remains devoted to the family music. Nell, could you sing us one of the songs you learned from your grandmother?
Yes, how about Raleigh True Love?
That would be nice.
As I went out one morning through the morning star, Raleigh true love, true Raleigh day. As I went out one morning to view the morning star, I heard a loving mother talking to her daughter dear, Raleigh true love, true Raleigh day.
One of the least changing elements in hillbilly music is the sacred song. And the entire family, including the grandchildren growing up in the tradition, gather around to sing gospel songs. The old songs are what the Walkers like, but the key to big-time success, which Nell strives for, requires new and original material, but within the newer country western style.
As I read the letter you wrote me this morning, tells of us love and now it's true. Oh, I'm glad it's all over, oh, somehow I recovered, but I couldn't believe it now it's lies. Oh, I never believed it, dear, I hadn't seen it. Why do I love him like I do? Oh, I'm glad you fell for her. I was not the girl for you, but I couldn't believe it now if I knew.
I said at the beginning of this program that I wanted you to learn the difference between mountain music and hill music, and I think that Wilgus has shown you that difference, and also shown you the interrelationship between the two. Now, obviously, he hasn't had time to talk about country western singing styles, nor has he had time to talk about the revival of the bluegrass bands among the folkniks today, nor has he had a chance to really tell you the relationship between hillbilly and Tin Pan Alley. Because singers like Nell Walker want to make it big in Nashville and make a lot of money out of their mountain music.
And Nell dreams that her songs will carry her to the hillbilly heaven of the Grand Ole Opry.
This is National Educational Television.